I believe the Niners had the worst offseason in the division by far after losing so much of their defense, which was the best part of their team last year after losing Justin Smith, Patrick Willis, and Chris Borland. I don't think they can really rebound and even be a 800 or 500 team this year. So my ceiling for them is 7-9, and that would be third in the division. And my floor for them would be 5-11. My prediction is them going around 6-10 because they lost so much of their defense. Vernon Davis is on the decline. You don't know how their wideouts are going to do. Their offensive line isn't the best in the league anymore. It hasn't been good for a few years now. So I would say they're going to be fourth in the division behind the St. Louis Rams just because of the Rams' improvement this offseason. So that's my thoughts for the San Francisco 49ers.
Okay, thank you gentlemen for chiming in on that. We'd like to go to Sheldon for his Arizona Cardinals. So what do you got?
Okay, the Arizona Cardinals had a very, very good year last year. It went very silent along most analysts, along the sports world. They ended up going 11-5, which you look at them and be like, well, that's not super, super good. But before Carson Palmer got hurt, they were 9-1, and they were en route to be the best team in their division that year. The key losses for the Cardinals, though, this year, all of them came on defense. They lost all-pro cornerback Antonio Cromartie as he returns to the New York Jets. They also lost Darnell Dockett to the division rival San Francisco 49ers, which I think really, really hurts them. And also the loss of Dan Williams as he exits to Oakland. It opens up holes in the Cardinals' defensive line, which could allow a lot more running against their defense, which would hurt them in the long run, no pun intended. The Cardinals also made a lot of key additions, though, by adding left guard Mike Iupati from the 49ers. He's a great run-blocking left guard. He can really help find a gap for the running back and really set the tone of the run game, as well as protect Carson Palmer more than he got last year. I think another key, it was more of just a retainment, keeping Larry Fitzgerald and not overpaying him, because like they keep an all-pro type wideout there and gives Carson Palmer some security. I also think the signing of Jermaine Gresham, like he adds a great receiving tight end, vastly improving over the last year's tight end John Carlson, which he was a liability in the pass game. Then in the first round of the draft, they took DJ Humphries out of Florida University with pick 24. Humphries will give them a lot of protection to Carson Palmer, as he was a great pass blocker in college. He's replacing offensive tackle Bobby Massey, who was probably the weakest offensive lineman on the Cardinals during the 2014 season. Cardinals in the second round took defensive end Marcus Golden out of Missouri, and that was a good pick because they filled the void left by Darnell Dockett. Golden's a hard worker with top-end speed for a D-end who will help the Cardinals sack more quarterbacks this season and hopefully help them stop the run game, which will be beneficial for the Cardinals. Then in the third round, they took a pretty surprise pick here, but they took David Johnson out of Northern Iowa. He was a good pick, though, because he gives them a dual halfback system between himself and Andre Ellington. Johnson adds a lot of needed help to the team with the third worst yards per carry after contact in the NFL last season, as David Johnson is more of a physical running back. So that was a good pick. They also lost their defensive coordinator, Todd Bowles, to the New York Jets, as he's going to be their new head coach. And they added James Betcher, as he's going to take over the role that Bowles had last season. So you could see possibly a drop-off defensively for them. They have a new, there possibly could be some quarterback turnover if Carson Palmer gets hurt again, or it just has a really bad year. Logan Thomas has been like rising through the ranks for that team, and he could really like become the front runner for the Cardinals starting role. The X factor I have for the team is Carson Palmer. If Palmer remains healthy and plays at the level he has been over the past few years, Cardinals have a legitimate chance to make a push in the playoffs and play like their 9-1 selves from the beginning of the 2014 season before Palmer tore his ACL. The key players to watch are Larry Fitzgerald, one, because if he can continue to play as an all-pro wideout and help Carson Palmer be like more of a security blanket for him. He will help the Arizona Cardinals pass game and hopefully open up the run game for them. Patrick Peterson needs to have a good year this year if the Cardinals want to really be able to do well this season and play like their defensive-minded selves, because defense is key to that team. So if Patrick Peterson can continue to be a top cornerback, he can really help that team win. Mike Iupati is a key player because he'll definitely bolster the Cardinals' rushing attack, especially up the middle, as he's one of the top run blockers in the NFL at the left guard position. Tyrann Mathieu is another player to watch. He has to have a great season because he might be playing up in the box a lot more often now after the loss to Darnell Dockett and Dan Williams, so he should be making a lot more tackles and hopefully bringing down the running back more often. And then my final key player to watch is DJ Humphries out of Florida, because he's a great pass protector and he'll give a lot of aid to the Cardinals' offensive line in keeping Carson Palmer on the field. My floor for this team is a 6-10 team when they lose a few close games that could have gone either way but got the short end of the stick, mainly due to the lack of pass rush and defensive run support after losing Dan Williams and Darnell Dockett this offseason. At best, though, the Cardinals could go 12-4, win the wild card, and make it up until the NFC conference game if Marcus Golden can fill the void left by Darnell Dockett and the offensive line really steps up in protecting Carson Palmer. My prediction, though, for the Arizona Cardinals is a 9-7 record with a wild card berth, but losing in the divisional round of the playoffs after the defense is exposed by a playoff team's strong run and pass game combo. Your thoughts, Austin?
I believe the Cardinals are a really underrated team. The pieces they have on defense to realize with Tyrann Mathieu, Patrick Peterson, and that team is so good, it's just they can't make that next step. What can we do to make the next step? I mean, they haven't made that next step since Kurt Warner was their quarterback, but the main thing they did address was getting offensive line. You look at Humphries, you look at Iupati. They're realizing that they got to protect Carson Palmer. They can't let him take hit after hit after hit. They did some great things in the offseason, maybe to push themselves into the playoffs and make a little deal run than divisional. I don't know, we're yet to see. But that's, what I think about them, and I'm proud of what they were able to do this offseason. So, Trey, we'll go to you on your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts on the team is the Cardinals are sadly, they're really good. They just, injuries riddled them the whole year because they made it to the wild card and then they faced a damaged Carolina team, correct me if I'm wrong. And they just could never put up points, and that was the thing that hurt them, was that I've never seen a quarterback so bad. I don't even remember, what was this guy's name? You guys remember?
Stanton.
No, it was not Stan. It was somebody else.
Skelton.
No.
Or Stanton.
I thought it
I
was.
don't remember.
Well, anyways, just continue on with your point.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but yeah, it was just really sad because, they played really well to that point. I mean, the defense was really good, even though the defense is more like, we're just going to blitz and hope to God that one of our players gets there. They did a lot of blitzing, all-out blitzing, But in the end, they're a really good team. I think Peterson needs to step up after a down year. He kind of did, as soon as he got the extension, is he just going to be bad? That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I just think that he has to solidify himself as a shutdown corner, as he says that he is. He's the best corner, and I want to see him show it. So in order for this to happen,
he's definitely got to back up his play there.
Exactly. You can't complain about Richard Sherman getting a huge deal, and then you get another huge deal, and then you just have a poor year, and you have wide receivers like Ruben Randall running all over you. No, it's not how it's supposed to go down. So I just think that if he can be consistent enough and get back to his ways, maybe this team has a chance to win the division. I highly doubt it, just because Seattle's kind of, to me, I think they're just a lock to win, but if they can do this and everybody can stay healthy, this team has some pure upside. And I'm going to say the ceiling for the team, 10 wins. The floor, I would say maybe about 8, just because they can be solid, and that defense carries them throughout games, and that's about all they can do.
Okay, yeah, good point on that. I'm gonna say for their ceiling is 11 wins, and their floor I'm gonna say is 7, just because injuries can kill them. But they're still a good team. But they just gotta hope the backup quarterback position can step up. But I think they're actually gonna go 10-6, take a wild card berth, and they're gonna run with it. Hope they can make it further in the playoffs. So thank you, Sheldon, for making your point for the Arizona Cardinals and reviewing them. Now here's the big boys, the Seattle Seahawks. Not kind of a quiet offseason, except for some pretty big name they brought in. So let's talk about that here. Right now, we'll have Sheldon address the key losses. So Sheldon, why don't you take that away?
Okay, the Seattle Seahawks lost some pretty key pieces to their offense and also their defense. The main loss is Byron Maxwell, the corner opposite of Richard Sherman, who really helped Richard Sherman become a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. He's a huge loss to the Legion of Boom secondary, because now the right side of the defense could be exposed in the pass game if newly acquired cornerbacks cannot step up. They also lost their center Max Unger, as he was traded to the New Orleans Saints for tight end Jimmy Graham. Although this trade looks super good for the Seattle Seahawks on paper, as it really bolsters their offense in the passing game, they could also be expecting more hits to Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson really have to making a lot more plays after some protection being lost in that trade. They also lost left guard James Carpenter, and that really opens up a gaping hole in their offensive line. Rookie Terry Poole needs to step up immediately and really fill the void left in the middle. And they also lost former Super Bowl MVP Malcolm Smith after his departure to Oakland, leaves Seattle in a bad spot at linebacker as they look for more depth.
Okay. Anything else? We'll have Trey talk about some of the additions they made here. Trey, would you like to talk about that, please?
Well, yes, sir, I would like to talk about that. We all know the big tight end, Jimmy Graham, trading from the Saints to here, and this gives them a new, a good first option, something that Russell Wilson has never had. He's tried to make Doug Baldwin into it, but to me, he's never quite lived up to it. Doug Baldwin's more like a number 2 receiver. He can be solid at times, and so has Jermaine Kearse. Jermaine Kearse really came on since the NFC Championship game last year, when he had the clutch touchdown, and then that's when he started to really, break out and emerge from down in the depth chart. And we're gonna have cornerback Terry Williams, another good. He's gonna be a big sign for the Seattle Seahawks, just because he's gonna replace Byron Maxwell. And you should expect anybody who's gonna play that right side to just play good, just because of the players around him. He has great safeties, play with him in All Thomas and Trent Champion. So you really shouldn't have to do much about worrying about the receiver getting over the top or blowing past you, because you have such great players and great instincts around you. So it shouldn't be too hard for him. And then they swooped nose tackle. Can you guys say this name? I'm sorry.
Tyba Rubin.
Thank you. From the Cleveland Browns, and it had some much needed defensive tackle. Kevin Williams walked away from football. Rubin will allow Seattle to run, 3 nose tackle rotation with Rubin, Brandon Mebane, and Tony McDaniel, who they just actually cut. So, because of recent extensions.
They wanted salary cap. They had salary cap crunch.
Yep, and the addition of cornerback Will Blackman. So, they're going to have some good players. I still think instead of Will Blackman playing slot, they should have Jeremy Lane play slot, because he played pretty solid up till, him breaking his arm in the Super Bowl. But other than that, the season, you didn't hear really too much about him, just because, Sherman just takes away from the other cornerbacks. And Maxwell was starting to get more attention as his play went on. So, yeah, that's the additions, and they seem to have, definitely addressed some Seahawks in need at cornerback. Just because
Right.
you need somebody to have opposite of Richard Sherman. I personally think they shouldn't have like bought a cornerback. They should have just drafted one, because you could, if push comes to shove, you could push Jeremy Lane to that second spot, and I think that he would have done just fine. But you know, it's just my opinion. All right, I'll let you guys talk about the draft.
Okay, I'll take the draft here. Did a little research on Frank Clark out of Michigan, who can help out in the defensive line rotation. They wanted to take that in the draft because of, you know, losing the key defensive linemen, such as McDaniel. They ended up cutting him because they believed in Frank Clark's ability, and he's a well-rounded pass rusher. In the third round, they took Tyler Lockett, who is a receiver from Kansas. He's a shifty return man and a very, very versatile athlete, and he can be very dangerous coming out of the slot. You have Baldwin on the outside, and you have Curse on the other outside, and then in the slot you can have Tyler Lockett, who is a sort of a Tavon Austin-like player, not hyped as much, but I think he's a very solid player that took in the third round. Didn't have to, you know, reach for him in the second. And the big one was Terry Poole out of San Diego State. He gives the Seahawks some much needed depth at the offensive line position, especially after losing Carpenter. He's very athletic, which gives him the capabilities to be a pulling guard, but he was not a very good, he didn't do very well in college with the bull rush, which was many teams considered a red flag, excuse me. And so if he can step up for Carpenter, that would be great, but they're going to need to give him a little time to develop. So the Seahawks are going to dig deep and try to find Simon, and they really are going to be kicking themselves, I think, for getting rid of Unger. And here we're going to talk about the top storylines of the offseason. I'll talk about the first one here, but I'll let Sheldon talk about the second one. And Russell Wilson is the big storyline here. He gets his 4-year, $87 million contract with the Seattle Seahawks. That's big money for him. I really don't think he deserves it. Okay, he's won a Super Bowl, yes, and led them to another, but that's a lot of their defense. He's a game manager. He cannot change the game with his arm. Let's face it, it's all about Marshawn Lynch. You look at the dollar, it's pretty close to Aaron Rodgers, but they're not even close to talent. This is just a signing for that you need to keep him, because if you let him walk, I mean, you have Tavares Jackson on your bench. So that's going to be, you know, that wouldn't be very good. They'd have to draft another one and could be wound up the same problem. But you do have a franchise quarterback you want to build around and you know you can win with. And the Seahawks use a bunch of money on him. Bobby Wagner tweets, "We can't keep everyone." Obviously, Tony McDaniels was a cap casualty from his signing. But, I mean, they got him back. That's what they needed to do. So, Sheldon, would you like to talk about here the second storyline?
Mr. I'm here so I don't get fined, Marshawn Lynch is back. After agreeing to a contract extension with the Seattle Seahawks to keep him for 2 more years, he will definitely bolster the offense and keep it consistent where he can run over defenses, especially in the playoffs when he seems to excel and be one of the most clutch players on that roster. Okay, Trey, so you can talk about coaching staff changes.
Well, the coaching staff changes that they have defensive coordinator went to Atlanta this year. So Chris Richards now has to take over the role as he was the defensive back coach of the Seattle Seahawks. So I think this is good, you know, in a change, because you get somebody who has developed so much talent in such a short amount of time. Just put him on you as your defensive coordinator, so maybe, you know, you can help all the other people. I don't think it was a major blow at all. I'm happy for Dan Quinn. He went to a great situation in Atlanta, I think. So just as, you know, I don't really think that's going to affect them too much. Chris Richards seems to know what he's doing, given the success cornerbacks have had in Seattle over the last 3 years. So I wouldn't be too worried about that at all. So I'm gonna have Austin talk about the X factors.
So right now we have, well, actually here we can have okay, I'll talk about the X factor. Jimmy Graham is a definite X factor for this team, as he can get the offense rolling. I mean, if things with Marshawn Lynch aren't going well, because they can't necessarily key up on Marshawn Lynch, kind of like what they do with Adrian Peterson with stacking him in the box. So now Jimmy Graham gives you a vertical tight end you can stretch the field with. Normally you don't have that in a tight end, but I mean, with Jimmy Graham, he's not the average tight end. He's a legitimate threat in the passing game and could lead them to their 3rd straight Super Bowl appearance. And Trey, would you like to talk about Michael Bennett, please?
Sure. Michael Bennett, he's been really good over the last few years. Last year he had 7 sacks and 38 total tackles. So, he's putting together a good year. The only thing that I would say is that if you watch him, he has a lot of offsides and false starts, and he's just, to me, he's too focused on getting there at the exact time. That's good in a player, but when it gets to the point where it costs your team the Super Bowl, it kind of gets repetitive. So to me, he's a really good defensive end. If he just lowers it down once in a while, I think he can turn to a even better, player, just because I kind of think that devalues him just the penalties alone, because you can't shut your team out just because you're worried about getting to the quarterback. You have to always give yourself a chance and give your team a chance.
Right.
I'll let Sheldon here talk about. Excuse me.
I could take Richard Sherman here. We can't go through this list, of course, without hearing the name Richard Sherman. In my opinion, he's not as good as people hype him to be. He blows man coverages sometimes, and especially zones. But you have to give him credit. He is one of the top corners in the game, but I don't think he's the best. But, okay, that's just opinion for everyone that thinks he is. I'm sorry. But anyway, a big thing for him is his success is driven off of how his safeties can come over the top. Because if he blows a coverage, his 2 all-pro safeties are on top to bail him out. So Richard Sherman, he will continue to be, one of the top corners in the game. And we'll have Sheldon talk about Marshawn Lynch.
Marshawn Lynch is probably one of the keys, if not the biggest key, for the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs again this year, if he can really run over a defense and open up the passing game for Russell Wilson. When he goes into his beast mode caliber type of play, he is the most unstoppable running back in the league. It's him and then AP. Like, AP is really good consistently, but when Marshawn Lynch is at his best, he is by far the best running back, I believe. He can take over the game, and especially in the playoffs, and defenses key in on him opening up the pass game, like I said before. And it allows Russell Wilson to make more plays, especially out of the pocket when they have everyone in the box. He can really roll out to his right and make a throw down the field if he needs to. Like when against the Packers when they were playing, and Clinton Dix came up on the play action and Russell Wilson burnt him down the field. That's really when you can see plays like that being clutch for the team. So now we'll have Austin talk about Bruce Irvin here.
Bruce Irvin is a big player for the Seattle defense, and I hope that they can, work out a deal, because he said he was going to Atlanta in the offseason, and a bunch of things blew up. But he's proven to be a stud of the linebacking core, although he's less effective in the run game. But he made up for it with the pass rushing abilities that he has with his finesse and power moves. And last season, he intercepted 2 passes for pick sixes. He had a total of 38 tackles, which was the reason why he's not in the elite category of the linebackers. So I think he'll be vital for this team. And finally, we get to the ceiling and the floor for this team. And Sheldon, would you like to say the ceiling?
The ceiling that we have compiled for the Seattle Seahawks this year is 14-2. They have the core of their team back in this year, including the addition of one of the best tight ends in the NFL in Jimmy Graham. Their defense is the best in the NFL with their great safeties and their good defensive line and linebacking core with Bobby Wagner in there. So I believe they have the strongest chance to do well in the division and will most likely win the division.
Okay, and our floor is 10-6. That could be a majority of things that go wrong for the defense. If Kerry Williams gets exposed, that could easily lose to some close losses. They have a tough schedule as well. So that's 10-6, but that's very unlikely. And for our official prediction, it's 3-13 due to the fact that they're such a tough team to beat at home. On the road, they went 5-3 last year, which was not impressive at all actually for them. But, I mean, they're always so good at home, so that's why I think they'll go 13-3. Plus, we're talking about a team that's made it to 2 straight Super Bowl appearances. Anything to add to that? Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in to the NFC West preview for this year. Hopefully, you know, we come close to our predictions, and if you want to stay tuned, we have another episode coming out for the NFC North next. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and see you next time.
Yep, hope you enjoyed. Bye.